the machines that collect the data, that analyze how they're running, almost always perform better than the machines that react day to day to different situations.
Welcome to Inside Tissue Manufacturing. I'm Rob Gusky. In this press felt series, we're exploring one of the most important and often least understood components of a tissue machine. Today, we'll discuss felt performance from the field perspective with Gary Rumrill. This isn't a product discussion, it's practical learning for operators, engineers, and managers. Gary, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Gary. Tell us a little about your background and how you became involved with press felts.
So I've been working in the tissue industry for the past about a good almost 20 years now. Before that, I was always in the paper industry. I did my internships in college, went for paper science engineering. So I've been around for a little bit, always learning. Now I'm working on the supplier side of things. So working a lot with press fabrics, forming fabrics, and rolls on the paper machine. So that's
Okay.
what I'm doing right now.
Oh, great. What I really like about your experience is you've worked on a tissue machine. How was that experience?
It was good. Working on a tissue machine, I did it for about probably 7 years. C-wrap, double wire, former. It's very good to do, especially when you begin your career, because you learn a lot. You learn a lot through troubleshooting, and that's where you get your base knowledge from, and you expand it from there.
Okay. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, a perfect career succession there.
Yeah, if anybody's going into this, just starting off, I always say work in the mill first before going to like the supplier side of the business, because I think you get a better foundation that way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agree with you. Okay, Gary, let's talk a little bit about why press felts matter. And just in your words, why are felts so important on a tissue machine?
Well, the felts are part of a bigger process, and it's an important part of the process. If the felt isn't being conditioned right, isn't being treated right, or set up properly, no matter how good the felt design is, the machine is not going to run very well. It's going to show up as sheet breaks or just a dirty machine. It's not going to give you the runability that you want. And it's not always a press issue, but I like to think of a press as a piece of a whole process. And really have to take in that whole process to understand what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure you visit a lot of different machines, different mills. Is there anything that you've seen that separates mills that consistently achieve really good felt
Yeah.
performance?
Yep. Yes, I get to see a lot of different mills and a lot of different, I want to say, operating philosophies. And so I tend to understand what works and what doesn't work. And one of the things I see is the machines that collect the data, that analyze how they're running, usually almost always perform better than the machines that kind of react day to different situations. They're not really tracking what's going on. They just kind of more of a reaction to a problem on the machine.
Hmm. Why do you think that is, Gary?
Some machines just don't have the ability to collect data. They're not set up to collect data on the run or and build that history to understand what's going on. A newer machine, you're going to have all the bells and whistles. You're going to be able to collect the data. You're going to see what kind of shower pressure you're running at, what the vacuum is doing, what your weir flow is doing, and you have that. You can take that all together and put that together and understand what is happening in the felt section or in the process, your whole paper making process in general, and that gives you a leg up on someone who doesn't know what's happening on their machine from day to day. They're just seeing the end result of a problem on the machine.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving us that perspective. Yeah, and I'll just say from my standpoint, I worked on a machine and I didn't have the opportunity to visit a lot of different machines like you do. So I think that's a really valuable perspective that you get. You talked a little bit about separating out the felt itself, the felt properties versus the overall process. So, my question is, why do you think felt performance is usually a reflection of the overall process?
If you don't have a healthy process, what's gonna happen, you're gonna end up seeing a defect in the sheet. And if you don't understand what's happening, if you have something, say, furnace related coming down the line, you're gonna it's going to react differently in the nip. You're not going to maybe not dewater as much, or the felt's going to fill faster, and you're going to see it as a felt problem when really it was further upstream where the problem was. Something was changed, and then it showed up as, oh, we're not getting our dryness target that we want, or we're seeing you're seeing crush in the sheet because of for filling. So the press is a indicator of what's going on, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good because I think there's a tendency sometimes to just say it's this about the felt or
Yeah,
that about the felt.
and a lot of people would say, "Oh, it's a felt issue. Let's change a felt." They put another felt on, and it runs fine for a period of time,
Hmm.
and then whatever problem they had in the past comes right back again. And it could be a felt design, a felt issue, but if you don't know what's happening, if you don't have a good process up to that point, you're probably not going to have a good conditioned felt.
Okay. All right, great. That's helpful, Gary. One thing about this podcast series is we really want to reach out to a lot of newer operators and engineers out there. As we look at industry, we see a lot of people retiring, and we want this podcast series to be a, almost a library, if you will, that people can go to and learn more about whatever our discussion topic is.
Okay.
So, if you were to say in a few words what the main purpose of a press felt on a tissue machine is, if you step back and look at it, what would you say to that new person?
I would say the main what you want a good felt to do is to be able to reliably pick up the sheet from the forming section, bring it to the press, be able to handle the water at the nip, be open enough to allow the water to flush through, coming out of the nip to be able to hold that water back from re-wetting the sheet,
Hmm.
and then have the ability to be conditioned back to a standard to allow you to get then again pick up the sheet. If anything, if one of those things are not being met, it's
Hmm.
you're going to have a problem.
Okay, thank you. That kind of sums it up, puts it in a broad perspective, which I think is helpful for the audience. Okay, I think from my perspective, that really helps us understand a little bit about why felts are important. And what I'd like to do is go a little bit deeper now, and let's talk about what actually happens inside a felt during its life. I'll ask you a question here. How does a new felt remove water? If you can explain to us kind of how that works and what's going on.
So how does a new felt remove the water?
Yeah.
So with the sheet on, you have a fiber structure. The felt already has water inside it. As you come up to the nip, you have a vacuum zone. All tissue machines have some kind of suction pressure, either bottom press or a suction pressure roll. And what you want to do is start pulling that water as you go into the nip. Now the felt needs to be open enough to allow that water as inside that nip to press, and you're gonna collapse the structure a little bit, kind of like a sponge, and you're gonna move that water from the sheet into the felt, and then flush the felt body out at the nip. You want enough support there to hold the sheet together and ability to transfer the sheet to the Yankee. And then you want the felt to react in a way. You want the felt to coming out of the neck to expand, to give some volume to the felt, to be able to be showered and vacuumed efficiently to remove any kind of contaminants that are left on the surface of the felt. Did that explain
Okay.
that right for you? I was trying to
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
through
No.
all the
Yeah.
way.
No. That's great. Well, so if you were to look at a new felt out of the box and then compare it to a felt that's run, say, 5 days,
Mhm.
7 days, and has been broken in, what would you say that some of the key differences from your perspective would be? What's going on inside that felt, or what has happened?
Well, the felt is going to compact. You're gonna see a little. It's going to, what I would say, densify. The surface is going to become denser because how a felt usually designed. You have most of this as you go from the roll side of the felt up to the sheet side of the felt. It's going to become denser and denser. So the felt's going to compact. Hopefully the surface batting should be laying flat, nice and smooth to allow a sheet to be picked up from the forming section. Trying to think of what else you would expect to see from a machine standpoint. I would expect to, after the felt's broken in, you're going to see a more water volume being expressed at the press roll compared to the Yule box because what you're seeing is the body of the felt getting denser, compacted. So the more water you're going to see being flushed at the press roll than at the Yule box. So the water handling is going to change a little bit. Initially, when you start with felt, the pressure roll is going to remove some water, but you're going to see a high weir flow at your gill box. And
Mm.
as the felt compacts, it's going to kind of switch. So that gill box flow is going to drop to a point, and the pressure roll is going to be removing most of the water.
Okay. And would you say that after that occurs, after the felt is broken in, that is a better state than where you first started? In other words, you can, even though the from what you talked about, it's more compacted, there's less
Mm-hmm.
volume, it actually performs better. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you're a couple of things are going on. You're dewatering more at the nip, at the pressure roll. So your consistency, your post pressure roll consistencies are going to be higher. So the higher you get the post pressure roll consistency, the less water that has to be removed from the sheet from the Yankee your hood. So your hood temperature should come down. Everything you, everything should act more efficiently. The other thing to think of too is you compact the felt, you're going to densify the surface, and a lot of like the contaminants that could bury itself deeper into the felt will now be filtered out at the surface, and which will hopefully, as long as your vacuums and showering set up right, be easier to be flushed from the felt.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Thanks. Gary, a couple of terms I heard you mention and would like to see if you could describe them a little bit in more detail. One is just permeability. What do you mean by that? Maybe how is it measured and that type of thing?
Yeah, so permeability is just a measurement how open the felt is. So there's a couple of ways to do it. With a brand new felt, and when they manufacture a felt, they always measure the permeability with air. So CFM, they give you a number with CFM. The higher the CFM, the more open the structure is. The lower the CFM, the denser it is. On the machine, when you're running on the machine, you'll see a lot of felt vendors or chemical vendors. They'll actually use a handheld permeability unit that they can run across the felt surface as it's running, and that just uses water, pushes water into the felt, and measures the flow rate of water into the felt and gets you a milliliters per minute number. The higher the number, the more open the felt is. That's just an indication of how well the the water can flow through the felt. Now, there's a balance there. You don't want the felt too open or too closed. If you're too close, you usually see that in a you know what we call crushing, like when the sheet looks deformed. But At the same time, you don't want to be too open because then you can get into a sheet re-wetting issue where you see higher hood temperatures than what you want. So there's a balance there, and it's something that you have to figure out. It's not always the same thing for every felt or same number for every felt design or every machine. It's usually specific to that machine.
Okay. So it sounds like it's going to be, as you said, specific. That perm number is going to be
Mhm.
specific for that machine, but you want to get into that good range by breaking the felt in, and then you'd like to maintain that.
Yeah. So you
Um,
want. So I will always say is you always want to. The goal of breaking the felt is to get that felt to compact that felt, but you want to compact it cleanly. So I
hmm,
always say the first week of the felt cycle is very important for the rest of the felt cycle to the end. If you
hmm.
get the first week, it's going to make your life easier the rest of the cycle.
Okay. No, that's good. Is there anything, any tips or anything you'd want to talk about or generalities about how to break that felt in cleanly? Or is that more dependent on each machine?
It's kind of machine dependent, and yeah, it's machine dependent. But there's some things that you can do to help break in. You can run a lower Yule box vacuum initially when you start out because the felt's so open. You're trying to compact it. You kind of want to help that compaction along. And Yule box vacuum or needle showering, you want to keep that in a minimal, let's say, especially if you're running a vernage, like virgin furnish.
Hmm.
If you're running like secondary fiber or like a dirtier furnish, you may want to get on that felt conditioning a little bit sooner. But to really understand what's going on your machine and how it's breaking in, you really need it has to be data driven, kind of like we talked about before. Between what do I see in good performing machines compared to machines that don't run as well, is they're very data driven and they're very consistent in their operations, how they're breaking the fells. There's no they limit their surprises that they have.
Yeah, that's what we all want, right?
Yep.
Minimal surprises
Yeah.
every day, like the next.
Yep.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Yeah, so what I'm thinking is we've talked about from maybe a somewhat a classroom level basics, understanding the felt.
Mm.
What I'd like to do now is walk out with you to the machine and go through what you do typically at a site. Where do you go first? Maybe start there and let's see where we go with this.
Okay. So a normal day, if I'm just so I'm coming into a machine and let's just say it's a machine that I'm used to going to. First thing I do is usually I talk to the operators first,
Hmm.
get an idea of what's going on. What are they seeing? Based on their information, I'm going to walk out to the floor. And if they're saying, no, everything's good today or no issues, my basic thing is, all right, let me look over the machine. Let me start at the floor level. Am I seeing stock build up anywhere on the machine floor coming out of like the pickup shoe area or where the sheet transfers to the felt? And I'm going to be looking for on the machine frame. Is it going to be covered in? Am I seeing stock being thrown around? The next thing I'm going to probably look at, or actually I'm going to do, is probably scan the felt if I have the opportunity to do that, just to get an idea of where they're running at compared to my previous visit there. And after I scan it, I'm going to get an idea of, I'm looking for closed areas or more open areas, and that's going to direct me where to go. If I see a closed area, let's say 5 feet in off the front edge, I'm going to say, let's go look at the needle showers, make sure they're not plugged. So I'm going to look at shower conditioning and items like that. I'm also going to probably, if I have the ability to, look at the sheet, look to see if any defects are coming over, any kind of drag marks that could indicate an issue in the felt section, in the forming section, or on the dryer.
Yeah, that's really helpful to get that from your perspective. I'm interested. The first thing you said is generally you're going to stop in the control room, talk to the operators. What do they usually have something to offer? Does it depend on the machine? How open are the operators to share what they're seeing out there? And can you give us an example of maybe something interesting or different that they might kind of information they might provide to you?
Um, Yeah, it's up to the operator, right? Everybody's a little different. Some people are more open than others, but for the most part, they're very generally very willing to share what's going on, especially if they're having a problem because you know they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have a bad running machine. No one wants that, so they want to get it fixed as soon as possible. So yeah, they're very open to share usually, and you can find some interesting things if you just ask the right questions.
Hmm.
Usually, if they say, "Oh, we're having this problem," you can help nail down when did you start having this problem, or do you have a sample of the defect? You can learn a lot from those things, and especially timing. Timing is very important. When did the defect show up? And then you start, looking at what changed on the machine at that time. Also, they're good at talking to operators that not everything is trendable on a machine, and they can tell you, "Oh, we've been having this. We had to shut this valve off, and we have it in bypass right now," which could help troubleshoot even more. That's something you can't see on a data screen, but
Hmm.
information they provide to you can be very helpful.
No, thanks for that insight. A lot of times you might not, people might not be aware of the value of that kind of just conversation, knowledge,
Yep.
relationship with operators. Okay. If you had to say, Gary, if you had to say, what does a healthy felt look like? What would be some signs that would make you feel like, hey, things are looking pretty good out there?
A healthy felt is gonna give an appearance of a visually. It's gonna look very uniform. So whatever color you expect. So if it's like a brown color,
Mm.
it's going to look very uniform. The other things are your vacuum numbers. So usually on machine, you target, like I like to target a pressure roll vacuum, a UO box vacuum. You kind of use that to gauge what is happening to the felt. So if you have a vacuum number, say you run a 12 inches of vacuum at your second pressure roll, and now you're running 14 inches, that's an indication, with everything else being normal, that's an indication of the felt's closing up or
Mm.
is closed up, right? You can trend it, hopefully. You look at the weird flow, and that tells you, did I compact right? Is my weird flow in the range that I expect it to be? Permeability is another thing. Items is it gives you an indication of your health of your felt. So if I'm getting a very low number, average perm number, I'm saying maybe we should be looking at showering this felt more because it's on a closed side. I would never take one
Mm.
thing, one item, and say, "Yep, this is telling me this." I like to think of it like we talked about earlier. It's more of a process. I'm looking for multiple things to tell me something is occurring. The felt is filling, or the felt is more to the open side. Just never just take one number and say, "Yep, this is telling me everything," because I tend to find that relying on one thing will maybe lead you down the wrong path.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand that. We also talked a little bit about just the vacuum and the showers, pressures, and things like that.
Mhm.
Can you tell us at a high level how showering and the vacuums affect felt performance?
Yeah, so at a very high level, you know, showering is a tool to condition the felt, to say clean the felt, open the felt from where it is currently. So more showering, the more you're trying to open that felt up, maybe break up any kind of contaminants and allow that Yule box to work on the surface of the felt. Vacuum is more of the result of showering and what's happening to the felt. It's as the vacuum of the pressure roll, you can use Yule box too. As that increases, as you start seeing that trend higher, that's an indication of your felts closing up. So with a brand new felt, it's going to start very low. As you compact it, you're going to see that number start to rise, and you should get a number where you are comfortable running at. But vacuums to me is an indication of felt filling or a felt more open, and showering is your tool to help get you to the range that you want.
And have you seen, are there some typical ways that a machine will try to maintain a uniform vacuum? In other words, how will they work with their showers to try to keep it vacuum in a more or less stable range?
So it's conditioning is like we talked about, it's not the same for every machine. So some machines, they set it and they set a let's just say a pressure on their needle shower, and that gives them the vacuum they want, and they kind of run it right there. Other people tend to look at the vacuum and let the vacuum, like pressure vacuum, come up to a certain level, and then they want to say, all right, let's shower it down to a certain level, and that's how they maintain their conditioning strategy.
Okay, so it's so sometimes it will depend on just the philosophy or
Yeah. Yep.
how the folks running the machine think about it. Okay, good, good. All right, no, that's we went out and got a little wet there, getting looking at the machine. And anything else you want to add about just as you're looking over your machine out there? Or I think you pretty well covered things, but
Yeah, it's really just understanding that to me the most important things are the showers working properly, are you getting the volume of water on the felt that you want, and then is your vacuums in the right range where you want to see the vacuums run. If something's off, if you have a plug nozzle, that's going to show up as a more closed area right there if you have some filling. Or if the overall vacuum is higher, you're going to say the felt's filling, compacting, maybe I should open up before I lead into a sheet issue.
hmm, okay, okay, no, that's perfect.
Hmm.
All right, now you said something right at the beginning that I found very interesting, talking about just initially when you say walk into a control room, have a discussion with an operator, they might tell you a symptom, and then you might ask them when or what and problem solving. So if a milk contacts you and says, hey, we're having a problem, our felt isn't performing, whatever the situation, how do you begin? How do you start to try to help them out?
I'm trying to understand what the problem is, right? Sometimes the problem is very vague, which is say they say we're having sheet breaks. To me, it is a problem, but it's vague on what the problem is. So I'm gonna come in and be like, or ask over the phone if they call me, or what does it look like? Where is it occurring on the machine or on the sheet? Is it in the center? Is it on the edges? Try to get understanding of what the issue is. Is it I say a specific area on the sheet, or is it just total, like we're our hood temperatures are just high, right? Overall dryness is just dropped off. Understand what the problem is, where's happening, and when did it start. All those things taken together can point you to the right direction, that, oh, maybe we should be looking at this, or, oh, we changed this on machine at that time when the problem started occurring. What could that have caused on the machine when we made that change? And that's
So,
where I start at.
okay, so it sounds to me like really, if you're an operator or an engineer, getting some background in problem solving skills, just some basic knowledge of how to ask the right questions. It seems like that's really what you do to try to find
Yep.
out what direction you need to go in.
Yeah. The more information the better most of the time.
Okay. Is there any specific data you would initially ask for, or it really depends on the
It
problem?
really depends on the problem. It depends on, like I said, is it a specific location that we're having a problem on the sheet, or is it like overall dryness or things like that? If it's a specific area, it really helps, because then you can narrow it down to, we should be looking in this area, either on the felt, or why is it different here than, say, next to it. There's got to be something showing up there. Or you can even take it back further from the felt and go into the wire section, start looking at the head box. Is there anything going on there? Is there some kind of, are we seeing different sheet properties there that could be indicating something's happening at the forming zone? But yeah, those are usually, to me, a little bit easier to do than overall, it can be a little more harder to diagnose.
Okay. Hey, I don't mean to put you on the spot again, Gary,
Yeah.
but do you have any specific stories or anything along those lines when you've been out there troubleshooting and you found an aha or something to help our listeners really
Oh, a
understand the
real,
value?
I think a real simple thing would be we're having holes in the sheet. Oh, okay. What's the holes look like? Were they? Is it holes all over the sheet? No, it's in one location. They will tell me it's in one location. Let's just say 20 inches off the front edge of the sheet. Oh, okay. What does the holes look like? They look like round. They're kind of round, and it looks like they've been torn out a little bit from the doctor. Then you can ask, what is the spacing of that of the holes? Is it just random, or is it
Hmm.
a certain time frame that you're seeing it? And for example, like there was a sticky on the fabric. It's something very common. You say, how do I know it's a sticky? It's happening every let's just say the felt is 100 feet long. It's happening every certain distance. You got to add crepe in there and all
Mm-hmm.
that, but it's happening every certain distance, always in this location. You know, then you can narrow down and be like, there's something on the felt. It matching up with every felt rotation, you're getting a hole every felt rotation.
Hmm.
That narrows it down and makes it. It's not because a felt is filled or you have a problem in the on the wire or there's some issue with the crepe doctor. It's on the felt because it matches the felt length, the hole, and then you can narrow it down and deal with it.
No, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
Talking about how to really troubleshoot some of those issues. Um, okay, great, great. Gary, before we finish, I'd like to ask a couple of questions that really draw on your experience, the years of experience you've had around tissue machines.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe the first thing, as you've worked with operators and engineers on the machine, is there a misconception? What is the biggest misconception you've seen? And then you can talk to folks and help them understand better. Is there anything like that comes to mind?
The biggest misconception is if there's an issue in the press section, it's got to be something wrong with the felt itself or felt design itself. And a lot of times, the felt is more of an indication of how healthy your process is. For example, one of your biggest conditioning elements on the machine is going to be the nip for their suction pressure roll Yankee. That nip uniformity. If that's not set up properly, your felt conditioning is going to hurt. No matter what your felt design is, could be the best felt design for that machine. It's still not going to be. It's still not going to run efficiently. You're not going to get the most out of it. It's not due to the felt. It's not due to its design or anything like that. It's just there's something off in the process, or the nip was off, causing the felt to fill. Let's just say. And to me, that's the hardest thing to get through people is like, yeah, if you change the felt, the problem goes away for a certain period of time.
Hmm.
Then it'll come right back.
Hmm.
So, a lot of people say, see, we changed the felt. Look, we're all good now. Yeah, you are until the problem shows up again. And it shows up usually the same way. So to me, the felt gives you a good indication of the health around like how healthy your process is.
Okay, great. All right, we didn't talk too much about felt life, but let's just talk in general about
Mm-hmm.
felt life. And if you could go to an operator and say, or an engineer for that matter, what is one habit you would encourage them that would extend felt life? Is there anything like that?
Be this from seeing a lot of different felts out there and a lot of different philosophies. I think the biggest thing is be consistent in how you run the felt and be data driven and how you make decisions on how to improve your felt life. Without those things, you're kind of just shooting into the wind. If you're not consistent from crew to crew or every day and how you, or from felt to felt, how you're breaking the felt, to how you run the felt throughout its life. And if you're not looking at the data, I don't see how you can really improve
Hmm.
on what you're currently doing.
Something like if we don't measure it, it's hard for us to really
Yeah.
improve anything.
Yep.
What about the opposite of that? Is there something that you've seen out there that will shorten felt life?
A lot of it's, you know, like not being properly set up. So I used my last example was like the nip. That's one thing that could shorten the felt because you're going to end up compacting the felt differently in different areas, and it's not going to be conditioned the same. The other things is how healthy your water is for your cleaning showers. Are your showers working properly? And the chemicals that you're using and the furnish. There's a lot that can shorten the felt life,
Hmm.
right? Using a
Okay.
dirtier furnish, you're going to end up plugging the felt. And same with water quality. If you're not maintaining water quality in your showers, they have a tendency to shorten felt life too.
Hmm. Okay. A lot about today. We talked a lot about data, having a regular collection of information and using that to help
Mhm.
us make our decisions. If a mill is out there now, a machine that they aren't really doing much in those terms, do you have a key thing that maybe they could start doing on a weekly basis, on a regular basis? Where might they start?
I'll be looking at your collecting vacuum data. Like I, I don't I don't know what they would have, but if they can collect it daily, if they run different grades, collect it for each grade, understand where your vacuums want where you run the best at, that's where I would start first, collecting the data around your vacuum and your showering. To me, that's very important to understand how your felt's doing.
Oh, that's great. That's very helpful, very practical information. I got one final question for you, Gary.
Mhm.
So, if you could spend a few minutes with a new operator or a new engineer on the machine, what would you tell them?
Someone who's new to the machine, I would tell them to really listen to the operators on the machine. They've been there, they lived it, they know what a good running machine looks like from their perspective. Like this is what it's supposed to be. Coming in green or coming in new to the machine, you might not understand what a good condition looks like. So listen to the operators, the systems of the machine. So the stock approach system, start learning the stock approach system up to the real. Understand those systems. I think you'd be good. You can understand a lot.
Hmm. All right, Gary. Gary, thank you very much for spending some time with us, sharing your experience and practical insights. I know our listeners are going to take away ideas that they can apply in their own on their own machines. Anything else?
I think understanding like working with the crews, working with your suppliers is it really helps you make the machine perform almost better or more efficiently. Bringing everybody together to work together to help bring the machine up to a better status, I think is key. Working together.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, for joining us today. If you have any comments on today's conversation or any ideas for future topics or guests, please leave a comment. And until next time, keep learning, keep improving, stay safe, and remember the people closest to the machine are often closest to the truth. Thanks for listening.